All right, it's 5:30, time to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Welcome everyone that's in attendance for the meeting tonight. Hopefully this will go fairly quick and you'll be able to get on with other activities you may have planned later on. So, all right, gentlemen, you've had a chance to look at the agenda. Are you good?
I'd like to have item C of consent agenda removed for discussion under items for commission action.
Excellent. All right. So I make a motion that we approve the agenda with the exception of C, which we are going to move to items for commission action.
A second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right, and then we approved the consent agenda minus item C, which is going to be moved for items for commission action, and that's the motion. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, moving right along. 3, public hearing. We have a public hearing to consider condemnation of 301 Cement Street, and this was adjourned from November 21st, 2019.
Good evening, Mayor. We would ask, after David and I did some little research today, to adjourn this to January 23rd, or recess it, to January 23rd. We want, what's it called, David? We're doing a title search. And we want to make sure there's not a mortgage out there. And if there is, notify them. So if we could recess to January 23rd and give us time to do some research, and then we'll bring it back for a public hearing on January 23rd.
All right. All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
So we'll make a motion that we will take this item, we will recess this item to January 23rd of 2020 in regards to them doing the title search. Then they'll bring it back for commission. And do I have a second on
Second.
that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. Item 4, items for commission action. Item A, consider authorizing the issuance of $1,200,000 in taxable industrial revenue bonds, Series 2019, for Textron Aviation Incorporated. Yes, sir. How are you this evening?
Good evening. Dominic Eck with Gilmore and Bell, bond counsel to the city.
All right.
For us this evening, we've got the ordinance to authorize the annual Textron IRB issuance. As mentioned, it's for $1.2 million this year. It is under the same letter of intent that have the last several have been. This is now the 16th supplemental indenture for this project. The bonds will stay outstanding until June 15th of 2030. And as a reminder, do not count towards the debt limit of the city, nor are they obligations of the city in any way. And happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Okay. Thank you. Gentlemen?
The IRB is for equipment and facility upgrades, correct?
That's correct.
And
That's correct.
I don't have
further
Gary.
questions.
Nope.
Okay, we've been through this before. All right, thank
Certainly.
you. That was short and sweet.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All righty. So I make a motion that we move to approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the city taxable industrial revenue bond, Series 2019, Textron Aviation Incorporated, authorizing certain documents and actions in connection with the issuance of the Series 2019 bonds. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item B, consider authorizing a memorandum of understanding with Independence USD 446 Recreation Commission regarding property east of the 800-900 block of North Penn Avenue and west of the 800-900 block of North Park Boulevard.
Mayor, we
Yes.
do have some suggested changes from Commissioner Conflish on this. And I also put together an aerial, and Jeff modified the language to address the ADA concerns to more clearly indicate what land it would be that they would be responsible for maintaining, and to ensure that the FEMA buyout properties guidelines were met, which they are flagged at the bottom of this aerial. Those are the ones that were received during the buyout. And Jeff can probably answer any questions on the agreement.
Okay, so this encompasses everything south of basically the railroad tracks and North Penn, and then along East Sycamore Street, which would be the skate park, and then the land that they're looking at to develop into a soccer complex along with all the ball fields, and that also includes the basketball court. That's correct? Would that encompass all the area that's outlined here on this aerial?
Yes, both the currently developed and then the future the undeveloped.
Undeveloped.
Yeah.
Okay. And looking at the MOU, it basically states that we're giving the Independence Recreation Commission the authority to do, what's the correct word I want to use here? They're basically going to do some planning and come up with, as far as how they're going to develop this, but before they move into setting anything in stone, they will come back before the commission and get our approval as far as what the plans are and how they're going to proceed from there. But this memorandum of understanding just basically defines the property in question that the Independence Recreation Commission will be responsible to maintain, and that was the purpose of this. So, gentlemen, any other questions?
The only reference to the ADA is that very last sentence. That's the only thing that was added.
Let me
Well,
see.
that whole paragraph was added, paragraph 6.
Okay.
Yeah,
And a couple whereases.
on
good to
the second and whereas, it says the property in question is located roughly between the skateboard park, and it goes on. If we're going to identify the property, should we include that stating either the bounds of the street, or at that point identify the map? Because
It's in the next
it sounds like roughly between that we're excluding some area.
The next
but-
whereas I think covers that. I incorporated the map by reference. That was the purpose of attaching the map, to clarify.
Yeah, it was a little, when I read that first paragraph, it seemed like without, where we're identifying that center section, we're not encompassing the existing ball fields, but it did cover it. Do we even need that one paragraph since you got it identified with the aerial photograph?
I don't think it hurts. I mean, if I were drawing this up for a bank that was going to put a mortgage on it, I would have to look up the legal description of each
Yeah.
tract, and that's what it would be. But this was intended as a general memorandum of understanding.
Because the map is much clearer, the indication of the property. With the ADA, this will include both the existing and their future development, that they have to make, they're responsible for all the ADA compliance.
Yeah, if you look at the first sentence on paragraph 6, it says beginning on the date of execution of this agreement, and then it's, their responsibility from that point forward.
All right, it states IRC shall maintain all the property subject to this agreement, including the undeveloped property, as well as the currently utilized properties such as the skate park area, baseball and softball facilities, including responsibility for mowing and the like. And some of the properties covered by this agreement were acquired by a city pursuant to a FEMA buyout program, and as a result thereof, have restrictions on use which must be complied with by both city and the IRC to the extent that ADA requirements apply to any use or development of the property. Independence Recreation Commission shall have the responsibility for compliance therewith.
So it is inclusive of existing development also.
Yes.
Yeah. I just, with the ADA issue with the Department of Justice, want to cover all our bases, because they did identify the property and the audit. So all the modifications necessary to the existing facility would become the responsibility of Independence City Rec.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Any other further questions, gentlemen?
Nick, do you have any comments on everything's fine?
Have you seen it?
Pretty much what all we discussed and everything before.
Did you get the revised one, Nick?
I know Brent did.
I'm sorry?
I know Brent did.
Okay. You want to look at it?
Okay. No further questions?
No.
We're good?
No.
All right. I make a motion that move to authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding with the Independence Recreation Commission.
A second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. 5, discussion. Consider discussing commission orientation and facility tour scheduled for December the 18th. Oh, I'm sorry. Got ahead of myself. Yep, we were going to consider item C, which was on the consent agenda. Thank you. I got excited because I thought we were moving through this pretty fast. And that don't happen very often, so you can understand my excitement, which was curtailed now. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, we're going to go back and consider item C, which was on the consent agenda, and that is consider authorizing the 5-year CIP for the Independence Municipal Airport to be submitted to the FAA.
My question was on the funding source for the projects. We've identified the funds that the federal government would provide and our local contribution. Some questions with, we've received KDOT grants in the past. How does a KDOT grant interact with this? Do the federal grant interlock with
You
a KDOT
can.
grant, or-
We would be able to apply for KDOT grants to help supplement the local cost part of it. Yes.
So then, as far as, looking at the total budget for the five years, I think it totaled,
I think our best bet for KDOT participation is going to be on the reconstruction of runway 1735, the big project. And we discussed that in our meeting, that's a very good candidate for a KDOT grant as well, to help with that, since it is a really large local match contribution. The other smaller yearly projects, we have a number of other airport projects that have in the past been overfunded, And so we've got about $200,000 of really airport funds that should go, were originally intended for airport projects that would be able to cover at least those first 4 years of cost.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, as we're getting to the sunset of the special use sales tax, and maybe start looking now at how that money, if we're going to go and we'll possibly with some of the funding items from that money need to see that it gets approved by the voters again, maybe identifying some of the specific projects that I looked back through our ordinance and it really didn't identify the airport as one of the items. It talked about streets and some facility, but you know, you look at what's been outlined here in the 5-year CIP and the significance that the airport does serve the community and of course Cessna, that maybe we need to include
I think the
some funding
economic
source
the
from
Economic
that.
Development and Transportation Fund has primarily been kind of the funding source for these larger projects at the airport rather than the special use sales tax. It fits pretty nicely into that, but it's certainly always an option.
Yeah, because, you know, as we look at economic development, if we can get other funding sources to help, then we'll still preserve money for economic development. And then, of course, the streets and the roads, that's a whole nother issue that it's going to definitely be ongoing. But I thought that from some of the years past, looking at just the annual revenue from the airport and the total costs we're looking at, maybe now is the time to start looking at the funding for that. It sounds like for the 2 years we've got a good grip on where it's coming and the potential then for the 700,000 part, our part of that major project, if we can get some KDOT funding for it, but also then start looking if we don't get the funding. But
Yes.
I know we've been fortunate to get a lot of grants for the airport runway lighting, various projects. It's really helped. It's far enough away from the city that sometimes we forget about it, but it sure is an important feature of our city.
It is.
Lacey, you're involved in grant writing. Are you some
Yeah,
grant
little-
writing?
Yes.
Have you had any luck? I know you apply for a lot of grants, and eventually you end up, your batting average improves as the more you apply for. Eventually, you know, you'll get some in return. So I just wondered. I kind of thought you were probably involved in some grant writing to
I
a
mean,
degree.
we've done the KDOT ones that really Trans Systems does the bulk of the heavy lifting
Okay.
on. I've passed some ideas up the chains, and a lot of projects that we've got, you know, ideas going on don't quite fit the criteria. So I can't think of one off the top of my head that I've fully written and submitted.
Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
What are the odds of getting all these projects funded by the federal government? Do we know?
They were very optimistic at our
Good.
meeting. Do you have any insight?
I think they're very good.
Yeah.
They're very good.
I never believe anything the federal government says, so
Well, neither do I, but they haven't denied us anything so far in all the years that I've worked.
Fantastic.
So
Okay.
we've got a lot going for us down there on the acceptance of these, especially the big one. You know, we've got the avionics, we have Textron, we have a lot going on down there. And Kansas Aviation is really 100% behind us on the airport itself. I mean, I believe there's other funding available. Like Lacey said, will they participate in the big project quite a bit? I mean, we've had small projects down there. Just when we put in the fuel farm, we got them to kick in another, I think, $15,000 on the grant. because we had some price discrepancies. So I think all of them will be looked at very favorably.
Much harder to get funding for the terminal itself, I'm guessing.
Yes, yes. You've got several categories. And it all depends what they see, how much the city is participating, and how much skin the city has in the game
Sure.
down there. And the city itself has picked that up, and it has been noticed through KDOT Aviation. They're very favorable. Cody's done a great job. He's done well with the head of KDOT Aviation. They've got a good working relationship. And KDOT Ave just wants to see Independence be extremely do everything they need to be done. Extremely successful.
I think continuing to make improvements to the
Oh,
FBO,
yeah.
though, will
Yeah.
only help us
Only
in
enhances.
these matters. I mean, they look at those things also, of how much we're putting into it as well. Not only on these projects, but on the airport as a whole.
And how much maintenance.
Yeah.
Maintenance is a big deal. If they don't see any maintenance going on our side, on the city side, like, why do we want to give them any money? But last 2 years have really been good down there.
So the first step is we submit our 5-year plan,
Yes, sir.
and then each year we would then submit a separate application to FFA.
Well, it would have to be broken out
FAA.
at that time. It'll be more in depth. It'll be the actual, we'll go through it at that time, once we get selected, if we get selected.
Okay.
But I mean, it's a gamble, if you don't turn it in, you're really not going to get accepted,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? So you got to keep it in that yearly cycle, and if something comes up, you don't have the funds, you can delay it a year.
So is this a specific grant application for the 5 years, or like in 2021, we'll have to submit a separate
Yes.
grant request
misunderstood.
for
Yeah.
that project?
But we'll, once we're selected, you go through that process basically again, and you fine tune, the whole process. I'll work with Matt at Lochner and Lacey on that. And all these projects pretty in depth, so, as far as construction and FAA regs. So, each one will have to have a separate application. But you don't want to start that process until you get the award.
Okay.
So from this, you'd get a notice that you've been
Been selected.
put in the group
Right.
to be considered. That's when we
No,
reapply.
This is consideration here.
Yeah.
This is the
This is like a
consideration.
preliminary acceptance.
Preliminary acceptance.
So they'll approve our 5-year plan, and then
Sure. Yeah, they never, I mean,
Yeah.
all this has been run past KDOT and FAA to start with, basically, through Lochner.
Okay.
So,
Sounds backwards. Sounds like we don't fill out the formal application until we found out we've gotten it or
well,
something.
it all depends when they get to awarding the money, especially, all of these are big projects. But they have different areas of money that they use, and that'll change throughout this cycle. So, and then you have, I mean, if we get awarded in 2 years, you got another year and a half of paperwork and funding that you have to work through. And that's when you start getting hold of KDOT. If you see a shortfall, we call them and say, what's the opportunities of getting some more money? And they've never turned us down when we do that. So they're very fortunate. I mean, they just want to see us succeed down there big time.
Great.
yeah, so we're planning for the 50,000 for now, and then once we get awarded the grant, then we apply to KDOT. If we get more money, then we can take the leftover 50,000, move it up to the next project.
Sure.
I don't know if there's necessarily an option to apply to KDOT every year for each of these projects. I don't know if that would be in our best interest. So, I mean, the way I
Pick
see it
and
is
choose.
I mean, if you see that the runway 1735 is a 3-year or 3-phase project, I think that's what we're aiming to apply with KDOT. It's an $800,000 project almost. And we currently have the funds for the 4 other years.
And they're relatively, the local, it's still a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but for bang for the buck, it's a good investment.
It is.
I mean, just like on 1735, you're looking at concrete out there that was put in World War II. Wow. It's kind of reached its life cycle. We've about patched enough.
Kind of.
We've got, they got their money's worth out of that one.
Fully depreciated.
Yes, exactly. But we've patched enough, and Lochner saw these funds come available at the federal level. It was last year, maybe a little bit longer, and decided to see if we could get into running. They did a good job for us. So,
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. If there are no further questions, I make a motion that we move to authorize city staff to sign the proposed CIP and submit it to the FAA. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. All right. Back to discussion. Item A, consider discussing a commission orientation and facility tour scheduled for December 18th, 2019.
Mayor, Commissioner Kuflish advised me that he is not available that day, but that you and Dean could go ahead and have it, in which case it wouldn't be a special meeting.
Okay.
When we discussed it with staff and I sent you the tentative schedule, we were concerned that we may not be able to hit all of those areas in one day.
Right.
So I can just work with you two on working that schedule out if that works for you.
Yeah, that would be fine. You had mentioned about we had had a tour of the water plant earlier.
Yeah, so we were going to take
so
that one
take that
out.
one out.
You still have a lot of ground to cover.
Right.
And I anticipate starting at the sewer plant because that takes that driving time out of the beginning.
Okay.
But if we hit the airport that day, then, that's going to take a little while to get out there. And so, I mean, we may have to spread it over more than one day, but if it's,
Okay.
I can just work with you and Dean if you want, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
If something came up that
Yeah,
got a commitment in the morning now.
right.
Okay, well, let me get back with you on this Monday, sometime
Yeah.
Monday.
That'd be
And then
fine.
we'll kind of figure out how we're going to proceed from there then.
Okay,
Okay?
that sounds
Alrighty.
good.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. All right. Item 6, reports. Everyone's had a chance to look at the November 2019 sales tax report. Lacey?
The November sales tax report, we still are 4.2% up for the first 11 months of 2019. We're totaling 1.8, almost $1.9 million in the 1% sales tax. I mean, we were down 0.6% from November of last year. But if you look at the 10-year graph, November is basically, within 1% or 2% for the last 10 years. So very consistent in November. Do you guys have any questions?
The main concern is that we generate enough sales tax to cover what we had in our budget. And you feel that we're on track to receive enough to
We've
meet our
already
commitment.
collected 95, as of November, we'd already collected 95% of our budget. So yes, I think we'll collect, the projections show that we'll collect 4.2% over our budgeted amount.
Good.
Yep. Or actually, sorry, 5.3% higher than our budget, 4.2% higher than what was collected last year.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Lacey. All right. Item B, 223 West Main Street update. David.
Mayor, I wasn't going to say much, but Mr. Morrison did contact me this afternoon and said, David, I heard you've spoke to Josh, and I have spoke to Josh. Kansas State Fire Marshal's Office did speak to me and reviewed some stuff. They were denied. By the Fire Marshal's Office. Mr. Morrison said they are working to respond back, and he plans on responding back to Fire Marshal's Office. And, he said we'll just continue to work it till we get their approval. So he just wanted me to relay that they're going to respond back, and he will respond to us once he gets an approval from the Fire Marshal's Office.
Has he submitted any updated?
He has not submitted anything to us, Mayor. He has submitted some stuff to what he needed for the fire marshal's review, but nothing has been sent to us.
So the response to the life safety fire prevention review from Pool Fire Protection has there not been a response?
I have no response, and he indicated he would respond to us after he gets approval from the fire marshal's office. Today, that's what he said.
A revised code footprint was submitted to the fire marshal, or
No.
we've received nothing?
We've received nothing. And I didn't ask Josh to share it with us or anything. I didn't feel that. I mean, Josh has spoke to me. We've talked about it, but I have not received anything.
All right.
Thank you,
David, thank you. All right, moving along. Excuse me. Item C, the reminder of the city employee appreciation luncheon, which is scheduled for tomorrow, December 13th, 2019.
And Mayor, you said you have a conflict, and
Yes.
we're going to have Leonard covered. Gary, are you planning on attending?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
absolutely.
You're missing out on some good stuff.
Oh, I know I am, and I hate to miss this, but I also made a commitment to the missus.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
I'm going to have to follow through with that first. So, but I wish I was there. But I thank you for filling in and doing whatever you need to do for me. Being I'm not going to be there, but express my. I'm sorry that I can't be there. It's just there's a scheduling problem, and that's just the way it works out. So
Yeah,
pass that along.
This month is tough.
Yeah, it is. It is. So anyway, well, I hope you guys have a good time. And anyway, moving along. We've all had a chance to look at the board minutes. Any questions about those?
No.
No.
None. Okay. City manager comments. Kelly, what do you have for us tonight?
Barb, they had a USDA inspection, so I was going to have her come up and
Oh,
give you
okay.
a brief review on that this week.
Okay. Barb, how are you this evening?
I'm great.
Good.
Thank you. I mentioned in our staff meeting today about yesterday we had our inspection, our USDA inspection to Kelly, and she said, well, you need to tell the commissioners about this. So I'm very proud to announce that we had no violations again. So this is the fourth in a row. And USDA inspectors, this time, every so often they bring a vet with them. And so it's a little more stringent inspection, and he was very pleased with everything that we're doing, the progress and the hard work we're doing, and I commend my staff for their excellent work. And so I guess I will just toot our horn for a while and
Sure.
enjoy that. So
Sure.
just wanted to let you know, good news.
That's great.
Good.
Congratulations.
Glad to hear that. Congratulations is right. And to the staff, yeah, great.
Doing great.
4 years in a row, and let's continue on that path.
Yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
And then David and Jerry wanted to give you an update on the active shooter drill that we had yesterday.
Okay.
Looks like just Jerry to me.
Chief, how are you?
Good. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Great.
We had an active shooter drill yesterday out at ICC West and went really well. It was a collaborative effort. David as the city's emergency manager, led the drill. Planned on it, so several months of planning went into it. I'd say a couple, 3 months of planning went into it. We coordinated with ICC. Cordell Jordan out at ICC, I think he's the vice president out there, and Mark Allen out there as well. We had the sheriff's office working with us. The sheriff was there, and Lieutenant Nick Wood. And then we had Indy Fire EMS and Labette Health were also involved. So it was a start to finish drill. It wasn't one of those drills where you go out and test one aspect of the first response. It was a start to finish drill, and it went off without a hitch. There were no injuries, and all the officers. I was really pleased to see the police officers respond. As a police chief, this is one of my biggest nightmares, and we don't get enough time to train for these things like we would. Even though we have an Alice instructor on staff, and we're going to get some more. We're going to get an active shooter response instructor on staff for the police department. We train on these things as we can, and then in the shifts individually train on them. So I was really pleased to see the officers' performance. I was pleased to see that they worked with the sheriff's office seamlessly, even changing teams. You know, as they were moving through, an officer would get tied up dealing with a person, and so the teams would just switch up, and a deputy would go to an officer team, and an officer would go to a deputy team, and it just went flawless, almost flawless. So it went very well, and it tested dispatch, fire EMS, the local ER. It tested everything that we have to throw at it. County emergency management was also involved, so it went very well.
Great.
And people seemed to enjoy it. Participants probably enjoyed it more than anybody. So.
The guy who was playing the shooter survived Brian throwing a trash can at him. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get shot? I see you got a bandage on your finger.
No. That'd be a heck of a good shot, wouldn't it? No, unrelated excitement.
Or did you pinch it in your slide when you were loading?
What you don't do is try to take donuts from police officers. You just don't do that kind of thing.
Oh, golly.
How often do you do this kind of drill, Jerry?
Well, we do. David, I think, conducts 2 drills a year as far as testing first response for the city goes, and we work with Rick over at County Emergency Management. A lot of entities around the community are very interested in this.
Yeah.
And we don't have any trouble getting people that want us to come do the drill at their facility. So we're already speaking with 3 entities right now that are interested in us testing it out at their facility. So the first phase that we do, though, if anybody's interested in TV land, the first phase is we send our Alice instructor out, and they do, I think it's a 2-day class, and we work with the sheriff's office on that as well. Kyle Hand over at the sheriff's office is also an Alice instructor, and Nick Wood. And so we work with those guys to bring Alice out to people that are interested in it, and that's the Run, Hide, Fight training, and you can see that a little bit about it online. Anyways, that's the first step, and then after that, we schedule the drill and come do it. So. Not as much as I would like to do it. We have so many things, just like all professions, there's so many competing training needs. Sure. But it's an important one, and I was really pleased to see how well it went. And we give Dave credit for put together a real good drill.
It's great to hear.
All right.
It's like a well-oiled
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
Pretty well oiled.
Yeah.
So when you go to a entity, are you training them on how to respond to an active shooter there?
Correct.
So they're prepared. So it's
There's 2 sides to it. There's what we train to do, which is not what we train them. We train them on what they should do. So, and a lot of entities in the area are really big in making sure their folks are protected. The city, we've done it with city staff, with city departments. There's a local manufacturer that's lined up. There's a major retailer in town, and their organization has their own internal program that's nationally recognized. So you would be surprised to know the number of places that are actively doing these things on a somewhat regular basis. It's pretty neat. It's frustrating that it has to be that way. but it's good to know that it's happening and that we do what we can to protect our community.
I think the reality of being prepared where you are is important, that if you expect to have somebody respond, police or sheriff's department, to respond and end it quickly, it's already over by the time you get there a lot of times. So, and it is important for an organization to be prepared to protect their employees, get them
That's right.
away from the act.
And we've had a meeting here, and I don't remember how many. There's 40 or 60 folks from churches in the local area, in the surrounding Independence area, that came in for that meeting. And so we're working with a local church that's interested in doing the training. And then, of course, we don't just limit ourselves to Independence. We'll help everybody around here, because our folks, our Independence folks, are going to be everywhere too. So if something tragic happens somewhere, I can promise you there'll probably be someone from Independence that's there. So why shouldn't we help each other out?
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. Proactive.
Do what we can. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it. Job well done, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay. Anything else, Kelly? No. You're good? All righty. So then we're moving into, there's no public concerns tonight, David? Okay. Commissioner comments, any gentlemen?
No.
We're good? Okay, so we're moving into the executive session, and the executive session is, I don't have the document. Sorry. I try to remember it from memory, but I didn't memorize it. Okay. We will be going to an executive session, so I move that we recess for an executive session for review and discussion of city manager applications pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception, KSA 75-4319B1. The open meeting will resume at, and we're looking at how many minutes, gentlemen?
15, 20.
20? Let's go, let's shoot for 20. So we'll convene at 6:33. Am I close? 6:33. And that's the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Yeah,
carries.
identify the people.
And the people that will be going in will be the commissioners and Dean. Okay, I was looking for him. Okay. And he was here, I just didn't see him in the back. Okay, the meeting is called back into session, and there was no action taken. So I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Wow. Well, I'm excited.